Today we gather here to talk about two of the worst films I have ever seen. Hey, what's up, ghouls and gals? Welcome back. Today we are on episode 2 to our little series here called I Finally Watched, where I'm going back to watch some of the films I skipped intentionally for one reason or another, and today we have a doozy. If you missed the first video in this series, I talked about Underwater and Crawl, one absolute gem and one very mid film. But today, both of these films suck. We're talking about the Martyrs remake, unfortunately, and also The Grudge from 2019. Two of the worst films I think I've ever seen. I'm just gonna cut to the chase right now. Do I regret watching these? Yes. I knew I skipped them for a reason. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and give this a thumbs up, subscribe for more, check out all of my links down below if you would like to see any more of me or support the channel any further. I will leave the first episode in this series linked down below. Let's start by diving into Martyrs. Now, this is an American remake of the 2008 Martyrs. This was released in 2016, directed by the Getz brothers. This movie has the tagline, "To see God, you need to experience pure evil." I have some thoughts. I think by now, most of us here have seen the original 2008 Martyrs. The first time I watched it was in 2020 with Alex when I first met him, and it was a movie that I had not seen because I was a little bit too uncomfortable to kind of watch it alone, but we are both sickos, and here we are. I did enjoy it. It was a really hard watch. It was a very taxing movie to get through. And this remake neutered that entirely. The remake does keep, like, the actual themes, trauma, friendship, the quest of transcendence through suffering, if you will. However, it drops the ball in every single way possible. This film is completely stripped of any violence, of any existential horror that the original presented to us. The original Martyrs almost leaves us with the question of, like, why is this happening? Who are these people? What is going on? The remake leaves us with the question, why was this made? This one is, for example, rage to rescue without any of the meat in between the bones. It brings this more into a mainstream thriller with more like supernatural elements than the original brought, but let's unpack this because I'm tired. The story follows Lucy, a young woman who escapes a childhood of brutality and torture. Years later, she tracks down the family she believes was responsible and enlists the help of her childhood friend Anna to confront them. However, after the confrontation, Anna discovers that Lucy's torment may not have ended and actually something darker lies beneath the surface. Now, as we know, the original Martyrs was a part of the new French extremity movement. It is raw, it is brutal. And like I said, it really makes you think, why is this happening? Who are these people? Why is she? Where did her skin go? The remake, on the other hand, sanitizes the violence completely, and don't get me wrong, some people may be like okay with that, and maybe you saw the remake and you were like, oh, okay, this is fine, but there is violence in this movie, and somehow compared to the original, it's more palatable. And I'm not saying that as a good thing either. We almost get this sort of like sisterhood against evil trope, which whatever, but like this is not the place for that. Now, Pascal Laugier, the director of the original Martyrs, had no involvement and publicly denounced this remake. He said it completely missed the point of the film, which I agree with. He actually sold the rights reluctantly and, like, fingers crossed, hoped that the remake would never be made. Here we are. But okay, are you ready to really get mad at this movie? The Getz brothers said they wanted to focus this retelling of the story on faith and friendship, making it more accessible. I didn't want to focus on the extremity of the story, which is the point of the whole story. And what really takes me out of this is we have Troyan Belisario from Pretty Little Liars, and we also have Bailey Noble, who is, well, she started in season 4, I believe, of maybe season 5 of True Blood. And it's just like seeing these familiar faces in this kind of made this the CW version of Martyrs. Now, let's get even more mad. The actresses that portrayed Lucy and Anna had little to no involvement with the original film whatsoever. The directors, the Gatz brothers, did not want them to be influenced by the story at all and wanted them to have like individual performances. But I feel like with a story like this, you kind of need to know what the performance is rooted in. Oh my gosh, I'm getting like flustered. But Blumhouse was one of the producers. Blumhouse, of course, had to get their grubby little hands in everything Jason Blum. And critics actually called this remake a watered down imitation that missed the depth, pain, and purpose of the source material. Now, this Martyrs remake is often cited as how Americanized films of these foreign classics, how they rarely succeed. Like, I want you to think of The Old Boy. I want you to think Josh Brolin, Old Boy, how different that was from the classic in the Vengeance trilogy. Like, how are you just going to remake the middle of the Vengeance trilogy? Like, it's get out of here. And this is proof that you cannot capture the same depth, emotional intensity, storytelling, or dread by trying to make something more palatable. Is it the worst horror movie ever? For me, yes, but maybe not in the grand scheme of things. I would give this a half a star out of 5. If I could give it a 0 out of 5, I probably would. I'm giving it 0. But let's move into Grudge, or The Grudge from 2019. Now, this is directed by Nicholas Pesci, and we'll get more into that, but this is not necessarily supposed to be a sequel or a remake. This is supposed to be a sidequel running parallel to the story of the 2004 Grudge. And you guys know that I've had a tumultuous past with The Grudge and how scared I used to be and still am of it. Like, literally, we go to bed with Tubi on every night, and last couple weeks ago, I woke up in the middle of the night. I didn't even open my eyes. I just heard on the TV, and I didn't even get up to go pee. I was like, I cannot. I'm like paralyzed with fear. Anyway, the film follows Detective Muldoon, played by Andrea Riseborough, who moves to a small Pennsylvania town and gets assigned to a case involving a burned down house. As she investigates a series of connected murders tied to the homes of former residents, she uncovers one of them returned home from Tokyo after encountering the original curse, bringing the malevolent force back to the United States. Now, what I didn't like in this film, and maybe it just translates differently, maybe if this was just done differently, I did not like there's a multi storyline going on. You've got like 4 different storylines going on in this movie, and like I can't even compare it to the original. Like I can, because like it's fine, it's whatever, it's not anywhere close to that. But the thing is, it's not supposed to be a remake, so I feel like I should not be comparing it to, it's supposed to be a continuation, and that's kind of where I get annoyed, I guess. I don't know. The multi-storyline, like, it's similar to the Japanese films, but it just seems way more convoluted. There's so many more people in this movie. A lot of really cool, like, Betty Gilpin's in this. There's John Cho. So much wasted talent in this movie, especially Andrea Riseborough. But we get a real estate agent and her dying husband, a pregnant couple dealing with grief, a detective haunted by her trauma, and the family that first brought the curse home. There's also like a Lynn Shay storyline where her husband is supposed to be the cop that like interacted with Sarah Michelle Gellar's character in the 2004 Grudge, and there's just so much going on in this movie, and like if you just kind of watch it not knowing anything about the old ones, like it doesn't make sense. This movie focuses more on like a grim, grounded kind of grief instead of like a supernatural horror, like, which is fine. I feel like The Grudge is really, at the end of the day, it is a story about grief. But instead of my girl Kyoko and Toshio being the main focus of the film, the curse kind of manifests itself into like different forms depending on what storyline you're following. Thus, a new version of the Grudge existing in a different, more updated, whatever. But let me, before I wrap up here, I really love Nicolas Pesce. Like, we've talked about 2 of his films here in depth. We've talked about Piercing. We've talked about The Eyes of My Mother, which I really loved. Both of those are really solid films. I think Piercing was actually an adaptation of something, but they felt cool. They felt original. They felt slick in like a different kind of way. And when you watch this movie, The Grudge, it just feels like it could have been directed by anyone else. It almost feels like a cop drama, and I don't like that. It feels procedural and less J-horror, existential, supernatural dread, which is what I want from The Grudge. I want to be afraid. Pesce also said that he wanted to make more of a mature horror and not a film full of flashy jump scares, and I think he didn't achieve that, because there was still jump scares in this movie, girl. I don't know what you're talking about. That movie was a chore to get through. It had a couple of cool murder set pieces, a couple of cool gore effects, but at the end of the day, it just felt like a confusing continuation of The Grudge. What is it? What are we gonna call it? TGU, the Grudge universe? But unlike the mess of Martyrs, which was an absolute mess that the director denounced, Takashi Shimizu, the director of The Grudge, he did the original Grudge, he did the 2004 Grudge, he really liked this sidequill, if you will. He said he openly supports the new vision. He said he liked that the mythology and the story was expanded on. And I thought the film was a choice. I'm actually going to give this one a rating. I'm going to actually rate this one a 1.5 out of 5. I don't think it was as bad as Martyrs. It was tolerable to watch. It didn't feel like it was as annoyed. As annoyed as I was watching the film, I wasn't as annoyed as I was watching Martyrs, and I think that is something to say at least. So let me know your thoughts on these 2 films down below. I'm actually really enjoying this series and going back to watch movies. I have a whole list of movies that we have to talk about for this series that I am gritting my teeth and watching one by one. But anyways, thank you for watching. Thanks for being here. I will see you so soon. In the beginning of December, I mentioned in my last video, we're going to start off with Christmas content, and then we are going to move right into our 2025 wrap up. So stay tuned. See you in the next video. Sayonara, Spooky fam.